you. I danced with you once upon a dream. Man, there was a time where I was obsessed with Once Upon a Time, dude. Where it was like this, I had to watch it every week. I was obsessed with it. I loved it. And then it all just went to shit. It started to kind of fall apart in the middle of season 2. Definitely around season 3. Even though Pan was a pretty solid villain, it was just kind of like, but what is this though? Where are we going? For about a season and a half, ABC's Once Upon a Time was everything to me. I was reading fan fiction. I was deep in that meta, especially about my girl Regina, who I still love forever. Lana Parrilla is my wife. I actually have her as my screensaver on my phone because I love her. There's Lana. Yeah, she's everything to me. So that's Bae. That's the evil queen. I hope she's at New York Comic Con this year. That would be so good. Please God, let it happen, please. Every Sunday I would go into my mother's room because she had the nice TV and I'm like, I need to watch Once Upon a Time. And it was my passion. I would Tumblr about it. Everything Regina was everything to me. I loved it. But somewhere around the middle of season 2 and season 3, I kind of realized that it was never going to reach its full potential. And I don't know if it's because of what its attachment is to with Disney, or if it's just because the writers are the writers, but it just could never commit to being better. It had moments where it was good, very few moments when it was great, but a lot of meh. If I'm going to pinpoint the exact moment where the show kind of made a really hard shift for me, it was definitely after Kora died. I think, in my opinion, Kora was the last really great antagonist to the show that had a very natural fit to the characters without it feeling extremely forced. I think that after Kora, then they had, you know, the whole thing with Neil's ex-girlfriend and bullshit, and then they had Peter Pan, who was almost his dad, Zelina, who was Regina's sister, fucking Frozen, and who was Emma's adopted foster mama. It was just, the fucking sea of serpents, bitches. It was just a lot of garbage. And it never really went back to that really great way that season and a half was. And they didn't know how to use the fairy tales in a very worthwhile way. And they especially didn't know how to do anything in terms of giving the minority characters or the LGBT characters anything to do. I mean, with minority characters, I mean, they killed them off for the most part. I mean, Lana Parrilla is the last brown person standing in that show. I mean, hopefully Henry's little pretty mixed daughter will make it. But beyond that, I mean, Merlin, you know, they made him this hot black dude, dead. Lancelot, hot black dude, dead. Guinevere, really great woman of color. I don't remember if she was Indian or Latina, but she was, you know, really great character. Didn't get anything to do. I mean, the Camelot arc kind of just went like, it was over before it even started. It just never really went anywhere if you were a minority character. Like, even Merlin, really strong, powerful character, still got murked. And they didn't care. With the LGBT storyline, it took them 5 seasons to give us a gay couple, and it was bullshit. I mean, straight up. I mean, like, I'm not saying you can't like that ship. I think it's called Ruby Slippers, which is a cute name and all, but let's just be factual. For several seasons, they had their biggest ships be queer ones. I mean, Swan Queen, whether you like them or not, is the couple that makes the most sense on this show. On this show, where an abuse victim's wife can come back to him 1,000,000 times and there be no consequences for it. On a show where Regina can be a rapist and so can her sister, and they can both live happily ever after. There is no reason why Emma Swan and Regina Mills, even though they are kind of sort of related, can't be together. Especially because Emma married her, let's see, how does this break down? So Emma married her baby daddy's stepfather. So Emma married her son's step grandfather. So you tell me if Swan Queen don't make sense because they related. Because if Emma can marry her son's step grandfather, she can marry her mother's stepmother. Like, it's just like, is it the extra degree of separation that makes it better? It just, to me, the whole thing, like, there's no good argument about Swan Queen that matches up with everything else. Like, it's abusive. Rumpel's abusive. It has incestual context. So does Captain Swan. Like, there is no good ship on this show except Snowing, and they're kind of boring, but that's okay because they're married and they don't need to be that interesting. So there was that. There was the whole Sleeping Warrior bullshit because everyone was like Mulan and Aurora. Mulan and Aurora. But we could even be polyamorous and have Philip be in there. Polyamorous beauty. Nope. They were just like, nope. Aurora's gonna be with Philip. Mulan's gonna go off to the middle of nowhere. And even when it was like, ooh, could it be Mulan and Merida? Nope. It's gonna be Ruby and Dorothy. For what? It was just such a mess. And to think that they were like, we wanted to do it right. We wanted to give you, we wanted to do a really solid queer storyline for two characters that you're never ever gonna see again. It's just, and that's the fundamental flaw with Once Upon a Time. They didn't know how to take real risks with their narrative and what they were doing, but they would do all these low-key fucked up things, like the statutory rapes, the actual rapes, the abusive relationships, the manipulation, all of these dark undertones that they would never fully commit to, because it would mean that their characters couldn't be put into these labels of, you're a hero, you're a villain, you're a savior, you're a this, you're family. It was just constantly having to redeem and regurgitate. It was like a bad episode of Dragon Ball Z, man. It was just good. It was to the point where the fact that Zelina ended up becoming a hero and being let into the whole good guy crew, I was like, this is fucking bonkers, dude. This is bonkers. Like, I know we're in denial about Regina being a rapist, but Zelina straight up raped Robin Hood for a while. And we know this factually, and yet she is raising this baby, and we're all just supposed to be okay with it. We're all supposed to be like, Zelina can totally raise baby Robin by herself, even though she killed Robin Hood's wife, and, raped Robin Hood to make that baby, but it's fine. It's all good. It's just that kind of ridiculous shit. And on top of it all, now all of these people are leaving the show. Emma's gonna be gone. So is Henry, David, Snow. Zelina's leaving. Bella's getting kicked off the show. I don't even think the actress wanted to leave. I believe the article said that they had to leave her because of creative differences. So, I don't know what the fuck's happening there. She's getting booted off the show. So it's gonna be Regina, Rumpelstiltskin, and Hook. And an adult Henry and this child that he has for some reason. And I'm just sitting here wondering, why? Why couldn't it just end? I mean, it ended on this kind of round table bullshit. So why not just have the show be over? I mean, I know it's still doing relatively well, but this whole we're gonna do a gender bent version of season 1. I mean, I know that was the best season, but still, what are we gonna be doing with this whole thing? I still don't know what is worth it for them to do this. I really don't know. And the finale wasn't even good. I mean, it was terrible. So I was just like, okay, this is all stupid. I mean, overall, the finale was just kind of dull more than anything else, I think, was the problem with it. I mean, it was very much like true love, happy ending, blah, blah, blah. And that would be fine if the show actually wanted to deal with the darker elements of its characters and what is actually being done. And I just, the whole cliche of it's a mental institution is just so overdone. I mean, Buffy did that, and it was just it's a tired trope of is the truth, or is it this mentally ill world? And just, it was all about setting up things in this really, really neat box, which would be fine, honestly, if this was the series finale. But because it's the beginning of, like, a new reboot, it's like, well, then that's not satisfactory at all, because, like, you're gonna be having this huge time jump where we lose all of these characters. And to me, what's so unsatisfactory about Once Upon a Time, as I said before, is it just was so afraid to go the places that it could be. I mean, especially with Rumpelstiltskin. I mean, Regina has a lot of her problems, and I say this as someone who loves the character, and I understand why Lana has stayed in with the series as long as she has. I mean, she's been very outspoken about the fact that, like, you know, she's considered not white enough to get white roles and not Latina enough to get Latina roles. She's very much in this very weird space, and as, like, a woman of color, I don't blame her for wanting to stay in a role that's been successful for her for as long as possible, and I'm not gonna bash her for that, no matter how problematic I think the character of Regina has become. I mean, there's a part of me that can't be satisfied with her arc or Rumpel's arc, even though those are probably the best characters, even though I hate Rumpelstiltskin, because the show never really deals with what they have done. I mean, as gratifying as it is from, like, a love the character perspective to see Regina be called queen in that end, and, like, to have her true love and have the two parts of her kind of be at peace, that's great. But, like, what about all the people she killed? What about the husband she raped? I mean, season 2 really became the thing that made Regina almost unredeemable, because she tried to separate a child from... She separated a child from his father and fucked him up totally for life, and nothing ever came of that. You know, all the people she's killed, that she raped a man, none of that ever was dealt with. Rumpelstiltskin's completely manipulative sexual behavior with pretty much every woman that's in his life, even his mother to a degree, never really dealt with. And all of these things are things that the writers have put out there and never wanted to do. And the fact that, like, Rumpel and Belle can get a happy ending and all this bullshit, it's wanting to make a fairy tale show where true love conquers all is fine. There is nothing wrong with that. But you can't have rape in it then. You can't have rape in it. You can't have creepy, manipulative, abusive relationships in it. You can't have pseudo-incest in it. And you can't lie about wanting to have real minority and gay conclusion. You cannot want to be a progressive show and then do nothing progressive in it. I mean, even the core thing of Henry having two mothers is put there so almost perfectly, but because they will never really, they called them both moms, and I think that's probably the only thing that after, like, 3 seasons, so almost half the show it took for it to actually get to that part right. And when it did, it was great, but it took so long to get there that there was just all of this bitterness from before that at this point, as great as it is to see Regina and Emma walk Henry together, it would be more powerful if they were just fucking together. Because I know Captain Swan is a very popular ship, and I'm not necessarily a Swan Queen shipper. I support it, but I don't ship it. To me, Swan Queen is the only relationship that makes sense for both of those female characters in that context. To me, everything that Regina and Emma have been through makes them more of a couple than Regina and Robin, which in my opinion was boring as shit, and Swan Captain or Captain Swan, whatever, which I also don't really care for, because I feel like Emma lost so much of her character and her own drive from being attached to Killian, and I've just never been a fan of that. And I think this finale it emphasized all the things that have always been a problem with this show. The sloppy writing, the inability to have real long-term stakes for anybody, and just the way that they can constantly redeem all of these, you know, all of Rumpelstiltskin's male bullshit, but all the female villainous have to die in really terrible ways, and they don't get to have the nuances, and how it's always about Rumpelstiltskin in the end. I mean, the Black Fairy was such a really good antagonist, but it just took us so long to get to her, and to have all of Rumpel's angst stem from mommy drama, I really wish that Once Upon a Time was a braver show. And if it couldn't be a braver show, that it was a softer show, honestly. If it couldn't really have the intensity of a Fables, I'd rather it than be a much go more camp then, because this weird medium it wants to be in between just has not worked for it, because it cannot commit to anything. I mean, this is a world where your soul can be tainted permanently if you kill someone in self-defense, but if you try and kidnap a baby and murder it, as the Charming tried to do with Maleficent's baby in season 4 or 5, you can still be fine until you kill Kora in self-defense. I mean, just all of that is just messy. I mean, and look, the plot holes, the lack of continuity, all of that has just been a constant problem for this show. And that's not going to change with this reboot. And I hope that it will be good, but I just don't think the writers really understand what makes the show bad. I really don't think they do, and that's the biggest problem with Once Upon a Time. It doesn't understand its own failings, and until it does, it's not going to get any better. And it's not going to get any gayer, it's not going to get any browner. At least I have no hope of it doing that. If somehow it were to come in season 7, it's going to be so beautiful and so amazing to have all the queer stuff, that'd be great, but I doubt that. Not when they fire half the cast and decide that they're just gonna just keep the 3 most popular characters and throw everyone into the wind. That just doesn't make me feel hopeful for that. And I'm not necessarily a fan of Belle. I hated Belle's character in the show, and they did a terrible job with her. I hate Zelina. Think she's a really bad character. Not really that great in the Charmings, although I do love Snow and Regina's relationship. But overall, even though I don't like those characters, for them to just be thrown out of the whole narrative and to be replaced by whatever comes next, I just don't think that that's going to be a good trend for this show. I don't think it's going to last this next season, honestly. It doesn't have it in itself. It's not that great of a show. If it does survive, I will honestly be surprised. And if by some chance it manages to be spectacular, that's great. I would love Lana Parrilla to be as happy and have as much work as she possibly wants, because she's an amazing fucking actress and has done a great job of humanizing a character that in weaker hands would be completely and utterly repulsive. But that's the best I can do. It had really good actors that elevated a lot of really shitty stuff above what it could have been, but that doesn't excuse the writing. It just hasn't been a good show in a very long time, and I don't know if it ever can be.